Okay, so we got the camera started, and what we're going to do now is just kind of go up the tower to do a little bit of work. And so the first thing I'm doing here is just getting my hard hat or helmet attached and adjusted properly. That way it's not going to fall off, and it's going to keep me protected if something is to fall on me or if I bump my head. And the only tool I need today is a hacksaw, because we're going to be removing an antenna that is quite tightly attached to the top. So the first step is to head up our little ladder to access the roof. And it's a little dark here, but there's a hatch that is actually just being repaired, so it does not have hinges at the moment. So this is the roof, and we actually start on the second floor of the building, so this would basically be equivalent to about the third floor. Now before I head up the tower, the first thing I check is make sure that all my carabiners are preset and locks are open, all the knots are secure. So this is the tower we'll be climbing today. It's about a 50-foot tower. Now as I head up for the first 10 feet or so, I don't actually need to clip in. But once I get beyond this, I want to make sure that I'm attached at all times, so if I let go, I'm not going to fall. I use a system of 2 carabiners. I'm always clipping in with one for just a moment while I move the rope up. This first set of cameras we're passing here is actually some weather service cameras. And you can actually watch the picture from those online, though they're actually out of service right now due to some repairs to the roof. By clipping onto the diagonal struts there, I can actually climb about an extra foot. So I can clip onto the lower part, and then the line will come up with me as I climb. There you can see I can pull that beaner up that extra foot, which saves me a little bit of time as I make my way up. Not a huge amount. So as I go up, I have to keep track of which side of the tower to climb, as we have various antennas and things in the way. Also, I go up, I check the guy lines a little bit, take the opportunity just to make sure things are secure and see if there's any problems that are visible. We don't go up here very often, normally only if we need to, so that's also when we might spot any other problems that might need addressing. The black cable here is our transmission line that actually feeds into our broadcast antennas here, which broadcasts the KATH low power digital signal. And there's 2 antennas, and that little box we just passed is what's called a power divider. And it just splits the power between the 2 antennas. Also checking those connections, just make sure nothing's working itself loose. If there is some looseness there, or if I could see any problems with water or something, I'd make a note to come up and maybe turn off the transmitter and redo some of those connector installations, or just kind of make sure things are snugged up. Everything seems to be in good order, so we're continuing on up. This is a piece of line that was actually left up here by myself about a week prior. I was up removing some other antennas and unfortunately ran out of time, so had to continue on down, but we left the line on the tower to save time. Sometimes those beaners ropes get crossed a little bit, so we make sure that everything is nice and open and not getting in the way. At this point we're getting pretty close towards the top of the tower. And notice as I'm clipping into kind of my last spot on the tower, I'm actually locking my beaner, because I'm not going to be unlocking it anytime soon, so I want to make sure that it's secure, and as I'm hanging around it doesn't unclip itself. As I'm climbing, I'm of course keeping very close track of where my hands are as I'm climbing the tower, and always have 3 points on, and so the ropes are pretty much a safety feature at that point to catch me if I was to fall. But as I'm at the top and start working, I actually put a little more weight on those lines, and so I make sure they're both secured nice and tight. Use a lot of carabiners. They're a quick, easy way of keeping everything attached. So our task for today is this antenna. The hardware has rusted, and so we simply have to cut it down. It's being removed from the tower. It's an old antenna that's not in service right now. It's a pretty good lesson for why to use stainless steel hardware when possible. All the other antennas came off very simply with a wrench, but this one decided to be a little trickier. When I was here prior, you can see the line that's already up there on the left tied on to that antenna, and I just checked that not as I arrived there, make sure that it's still secure. The line actually attaches to a beaner just right below it, so if it was to fall, it would only fall about 4 feet before being caught, and that same line will then be used to lower it all the way to the ground as well. You can see it attached there. So I've cut through one of the U-bolts, doing a little bit of experimentation here, trying to figure out how loose that is. That's a pretty nice view from up here. We're about 50 feet above the 3rd floor, so we're probably getting pretty close to about 100 feet above the ground, or maybe 80 feet or so above the ground level up here. The view is actually pretty cool. It's nice to just take a break and look around a little bit, especially when it's a nice day. See a float plane flying over there. They seem a lot closer when you're up at this altitude, but they really aren't flying that high. They take off from the channel just beyond us here. This old antenna used to point across the channel. There's a radio transmitter antenna over there for a radio station that used to be in this building, and so this was used to feed their signal over to their transmitter. So we're done cutting. Now you can see the antenna is moving, but it's still held in pretty tight. At this point I could make a second cut to cut away a larger section of the clamp, but at that point I might drop that piece of clamp, and I have better luck if I can just slide the antenna up off the top of the tube. Adjusting my feet a little. Sometimes these tubes get compressed a little bit by the clamps, and so they're not perfectly round. So just trying my luck to see if it might be a little thinner in one direction than another. this point I'm relying pretty heavily on the harness to keep me up here, in addition to having a good leg hold in the tower. And you can see why it's important to have a helmet, even though it's unlikely anything's going to fall on me when I'm at the very top here. These little bumps that are pretty loud on the camera, I'm barely noticing myself at all. Quick adjustment of my foothold down there. Once the antenna pops free, it's easy to give it a twist to open up that other opening a little bit. One clean tower. Towers very commonly have a single point up on the top like that, as there are many antenna types that actually might rotate on the top there with some designs, and it's just easier to clamp a larger antenna onto there. Sometimes they're actually extended with a single pole just to get a little more height, depending on what sort of structure is necessary on the top. In this case, it was just used to mount the antenna. So now I've detached that line from that first loop, and now I can use the line here to lower the antenna the rest of the way. I don't want to support the weight directly, but rather running through the carabiner, it adds some friction in there and helps me control the descent. And I intentionally let it swing a little bit and time slowing it down and then letting it pass to clear obstacles like the cameras and the guy lines. Once the line is off all the way, I'm just going to let that slide down the guy wire there. Clip on the beater. Make sure that I have everything with me. And start the process of clipping on down.
I'll be down in 2 minutes.
So we never climb alone, we always make sure there's someone else around. In this case, my co-worker is watching from the hatch, actually just below the hatch. Now that I've got everything off the tower, I'm not likely to drop anything. He's going to come on out. You can see some of these old antenna mounts that were used to attach other antennas off the side of the tower. We leave a lot of the mounting hardware up even if we take the antennas off. And the reason for taking a lot of the antennas off is when the wind hits the tower, the antennas act a little bit like a sail, and they can twist that tower and just put a little more stress and wear on the various mechanical parts. And so we just try and minimize that by taking down antennas that are no longer used. It also makes it easier to install new equipment if necessary. There's that power divider and the main transmission line. We flag that cable with orange tape just so that we can see really clearly that which one's which. When you got a whole bunch of black cables running up a tower, it's handy to be able to tell them apart. There's another old antenna mounting plate of some sort. Again, stepping around, pointing the antennas on one side, now the camera's on the other side. Just a couple more clips to go. Get that line all the way off the tower as well. So at this point we're pretty much done. We've got all the parts off the tower that we intended to. We're doing our last set of clips here. In fact, as we're getting down to that 10-foot mark, that last beaner just gets unclipped and clipped directly on to me. And down we come, another successful tower climb. And we're down at what we call ground level, of course. We're still on the 3rd floor, but all down and safe.